Saturday nights in the city always feel a little bit like a movie set, but this one feels overly staged. We're at one of those trendy restaurants with exposed brick walls and Edison bulbs, the kind of place where every cocktail has a clever name and every plate comes out looking like it was styled for Instagram. Fairy lights are strung in zigzags across the ceiling, casting everything in a warm, flattering glow. Our table runs along the back wall, long and crowded, pushed together from two smaller ones to accommodate a few friends, as Brandon put it when he told me about tonight. I thought it would be low-key, a little pre-wedding celebration. Some appetizers, maybe a toast to the fact that we finally picked a cake design after 3 weeks of indecision. Instead, it feels off. Brandon's friends are lined up along the sides, drinks in hand, all a little too amped for what was supposed to be a casual dinner. Their phones sit on the table, screens face down but within easy reach. Every time the server walks by, they quiet a fraction, like they're waiting for a cue. I smooth my dress over my knees, the fabric soft under my fingers. I spent extra time getting ready. His favorite red lipstick, the navy wrap dress he once said made me look like I belonged in a magazine. My engagement ring catches the light as I reach for my water, the diamond sending little shards of brightness across my hand. Someone cracks a joke, and I laugh, but it comes out thin. There's a tension in the air I can't quite name, like the static before a storm. Brandon, sitting beside me at the head of the table, has that energy he gets when he's about to perform. Back a little straighter, smile a little wider, voice just a notch louder than everyone else's. All right, he says, after the main courses have been mostly picked over. He picks up his glass and taps a fork against it, the clear chime cutting through the chatter. Listen up for a sec. Conversations die down, heads turn. A couple of his friends glance at each other, then at me. One of them flips his phone over, thumb hovering near the record button. My stomach lurches. Brandon stands, one hand still on my shoulder in a showy, possessive gesture. He looks around the table, this little half smirk on his face that I've seen 1,000 times at parties and work events. I own this room look. So, he begins, raising his glass. Most of you know Megan and I have been together for, 4 years now. There are scattered cheers and a few ahs. He pauses, giving them time to settle. 4 amazing years. He continues, squeezing my shoulder. I force a smile up at him, my heart unclenching a little. Maybe he's about to surprise me with something. An unexpected toast, a sweet story, some public declaration of love to make up for all the late nights and stress. He takes a breath. His expression shifts, almost imperceptibly. The smirk stays, the warmth doesn't. And because you're our closest friends, he says, I wanted you to hear this from me first. Something cold slides down my spine. I can't do this, he says. The words don't make sense at first. They hang there, suspended between the fairy lights and the flickering candles. He clears his throat. The wedding is off. I don't love you anymore. Not like that. It's like the entire restaurant tilts. For a second, all I can hear is the clink of someone's fork hitting their plate somewhere down the table. Then the blood rushes in my ears, drowning out the low murmur that rises as people shift, whisper, look anywhere but at me. I look up at him, searching his face for some sign that this is a joke, a prank, something that ends with, gotcha. And everyone laughing. His eyes won't meet mine. They're trained somewhere over my head, catching the reactions of his friends instead. Out of the corner of my eye, I see 2 phones lift, just slightly. Screens angled toward me. Recording. They're waiting. Waiting for me to cry, to scream, to throw my napkin and demand an explanation. Waiting for the hysterical fiancé meltdown they can replay in their group chat, the proof that Brandon had no choice. A shock slams into me first. Then, beneath it, something unexpected, a wave of pure, icy clarity. I don't stand right away. I take a breath, then another. The room snaps into sharp focus. The condensation on my water glass, the way one of his friends is biting back a smile. The flicker of candlelight on the ring that suddenly feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds on my finger. Slowly, I slide my chair back and rise to my feet. Brandon's hand drops from my shoulder. surprise flickering across his features for the first time. I look at him. Not at the phones, not at the audience, just at him. "Thank you," I say, my voice steady in a way I don't entirely recognize. "For being honest before I signed a marriage certificate with someone who thinks public humiliation is romantic." Couple of people suck in breaths. Someone at the far end whispers, "Wow." I pull the ring off my finger. The metal is warm from my skin. For a heartbeat, I hold it between us, then lean forward and place it gently on the table in front of his plate. "I hope you and whoever you've been rehearsing this speech with are very happy together," I add, letting my gaze flick, just once, to the raised phones. "Make sure you get my good side when you send the video around." I pick up my clutch, turn, and walk away. No tears, no begging, no scene. As I pushed open the restaurant door, I could feel everyone's eyes on my back, waiting for me to fall apart. I didn't. What none of them knew, not Brandon, not his little film crew, was that he'd just handed an event planner the perfect reason to plan the one party he never wanted to see. We met on a night when everything was supposed to be about someone else. I was 23, running on caffeine and adrenaline, coordinating a corporate gala for a tech client that thought, elegant but fun, meant fire eaters on a rooftop. I'd been on my feet for 12 hours straight, headset digging into my scalp, clipboard in hand, mentally juggling vendor timelines and VIP arrivals. At some point between the CEO's rambling speech and the dessert course, I ducked behind a curtain to text the catering manager. When I stepped back out, I nearly ran into him. "Whoa," he said, hands up in mock surrender, smiling. Didn't mean to get in the way of the wizard behind the curtain. He was handsome, in a polished sort of way. Perfectly tailored suit, easy grin. The kind of man who looked like he belonged at events like this, not behind the scenes sweating over whether the ice sculpture would melt. "You're Megan, right?" he said. "I'm Brandon. This whole thing is incredible. I've been watching you work. You're like an orchestra conductor. No one ever noticed me at my own events unless something went wrong." His words hit like a spotlight. "Thank you," I said, flushing. "Most people just see the pretty centerpieces." "Most people are idiots," he replied. "Seriously, you single-handedly kept this thing from falling apart." By the end of the night, he'd found 3 more excuses to come talk to me, asking for the name of the florist, making a joke about the dessert, offering to walk me to my car because it was late and weird guys come out at this hour. The next day, a bouquet of sunflowers arrived at the office with a note, "For the woman who made last night look effortless." Brandon, it felt like something out of a romantic movie. A year later, I would know that men like Brandon watch those movies too, but they're studying the role they're supposed to play. At first, he was my biggest cheerleader. He came to my events, bragged about me to his friends. "She runs the whole show," he'd say, arms slung around my shoulders. These guys would be lost without her. He posted photos of us at venues with captions like, "Proud of my girl," and "She's the reason this city knows how to party." My clients loved him. My colleagues envied me. "He really gets what you do," they said. And he did. At least, he got that my competence made him look good. The critique started small, tucked inside compliments like medicine in applesauce. "I love that dress," he'd say before adding, "but for events, maybe something a little less low-cut. You want to look professional, not like you're trying too hard, you know. I'm just helping you out." When I laughed too loudly at a joke, he'd murmur, "Babe, you're drawing attention. You don't have to be on all the time. Let other people shine." If I vented about work to friends over drinks, he'd later shake his head gently. "They don't really get your world, Meg. When you complain like that, it makes you sound ungrateful. You're lucky you have me. I understand how stressful it is." He started suggesting I skip certain hangouts. "Do you really need to go to Sarah's thing?" he'd ask. "We never get time together. And honestly, she's kind of a bad influence. She just wants you single and out with her." I told myself he just wanted more time with me, that it was sweet he worried about my reputation. that he was mature and everyone else was still stuck in their early 20s partying phase. Publicly, he never missed a chance to praise me. "Megan is incredible," he'd tell people. "She single-handedly keeps events from falling apart. I don't know how she does it." Privately, the tone was different. "You're so disorganized at home," he'd complain, nudging my stack of mail. "You can manage a 6-figure event budget, but you can't remember to buy paper towels." "You'd be lost without me," he'd say when I forgot an appointment or burned dinner. "It's a good thing I keep you grounded." Little by little, those comments wore grooves in my mind. I was still the woman who could orchestrate a 300-person gala without breaking a sweat, but at home, in the quiet spaces with him, I started to feel clumsy. Less. I stopped painting on weekends because he said it made the apartment smell like chemicals. I saw my best friend less because she doesn't respect our relationship. When my mother called, he'd sigh if the conversation ran too long. "You talk to her like 3 times a week, Megan. That's not normal." My world shrank. I worked. I came home. I checked in with him to see if what I wore, was too much. When he was pleased, I felt relief. When he wasn't, I felt like I'd failed. So when he proposed, I said yes before the ring box was even fully open. He did it in the most Brandon way possible, onstage at a charity gala I'd coordinated, in front of 200 guests and a photographer. He took the mic after the final speech, thanked the incredible woman who made tonight happen, then dropped to one knee under a shower of confetti. The crowd went wild. My friends screamed. My face was on a dozen Instagram stories before we even left the building. Wrapped in his arms afterward, with strangers patting my back and telling me, how lucky. I believed that saying yes meant all the sacrifices made sense. That the wedding would be the start of something stable and safe. That the critical voice in my head would finally quiet down once I was officially chosen. For 4 years, he'd been building a story where he was the devoted fiancé, and I was the lucky girl he saved. What I didn't realize was that he was also writing my role for the ending, and he thought he knew exactly how I'd play it. Wedding planning should have been my home turf. I'd spent years coordinating other people's big days, calming brides, smoothing over mother-in-law drama, turning last-minute crises into, you'd never know, miracles. If anyone was equipped to pull off a beautiful, drama-free wedding, it should have been me. And on paper, everything looked perfect. We had the venue booked. A converted warehouse with high ceilings and twinkle lights, the kind of place my clients always swooned over. The caterer was a chef I'd worked with on half a dozen events. The DJ owed me a favor. The florist was already texting me mood boards. My spreadsheets were immaculate. Timelines color-coded. Deposits paid on time. What I couldn't put into a spreadsheet was Brandon. When I asked questions about things that mattered to us as a couple, music, vows, ceremony style, he waved a hand. "Whatever you want, babe," he said, scrolling through his phone. "You're the expert." But when it came to things that mattered to him, he was suddenly very engaged. "My friends have to be front and center," he said, jabbing a finger at the seating chart. "They're my boys. They're not sitting in the back like extras." He circled certain names on my guest list. "Don't invite Jenna," he added. "She gives me bad vibes. And do we really need your old college roommates there? I never see them. Feels like a waste of a plate." "They're important to me," I protested. He sighed. "I'm paying for most of this, Megan. Can you not let me have a say without acting like I'm trying to control everything?" Joked. More often. Too. When I double-checked a vendor contract with him, he smirked. "You're lucky I'm still here, you know." Most guys would have run screaming from this level of planning. At his cousin's engagement party, I watched him lean in a little too close to one of my bridesmaids. Coworker he'd always called harmless fun. He touched her arm when she laughed, complimented her dress twice. Later, when I said it made me uncomfortable, he rolled his eyes. "You're being insecure," he said. "You know I love you. I can't even talk to another woman now." Meanwhile, the guest list morphed. Names I'd never heard of appeared, guys from his gym, some bra from his fantasy league, a woman he insisted was a close friend from work I'd somehow never met. When I suggested we cap the number, he bristled. Again, I'm paying, he repeated. If I want my people there, they'll be there. Do you want this wedding or not? Money became a weapon he wielded with increasing precision. If I questioned anything, a late venue payment, an upgrade he'd agreed to without consulting me, he shot back with, Do you have any idea how much this is costing me? Never mind the spreadsheets that showed my contributions, the savings I drained for deposits. Around the same time, his schedule changed. He was at the gym. More nights than not, out training, until late. Other evenings, he claimed he had to stay at the office because a big project was due. His phone, which used to lie face up on the coffee table, now traveled everywhere with him. Bedroom, bathroom, even the shower. Screen always turned away. When I asked if everything was okay, he pressed a kiss to my forehead. Just stress, he said. Wedding work. You know how it is. Don't make it about you. 2 weeks before that dinner, he came home buzzing. Was what? He said, dropping his keys in the bowl. Venue's officially locked in, final payment done. We should celebrate, I smiled, despite the knot that had taken up permanent residence under my ribs. Champagne here. No, he said quickly. Let's go out. I'll get the guys together, make a night of it. A little farewell to freedom, thing before I'm officially a kept man. The phrase stung, but I laughed weakly. He pulled out his phone, thumbs flying over the screen. Over the next few days, I caught glimpses of the group chat, his friends responding with over-the-top excitement, gifs of popcorn and exploding fireworks. One message, half seen as he angled the screen away, read, Can't wait for it's gonna be epic. Big plans. I asked. He grinned. Just the boys being dramatic. Wear that navy dress I like, okay? Go all out. I want to show off my fiancé. The knot in my stomach tightened. Something about his eagerness, the way his friends were hyping a simple dinner, the fact that he'd specified my outfit. It all set my nerves on edge. A small voice in my head whispered, He wouldn't humiliate you in a place full of people, right? I smoothed my expression in the bathroom mirror, practicing my smile like it was part of my makeup routine. He loves you, I told my reflection. He's just stressed. Don't be paranoid. If I'd listened to the knot in my stomach, I would have stayed home in sweatpants. Instead, I curled my hair, put on the dress he liked, and walked straight into the scene he'd been rehearsing for weeks. If the night had felt off when we first sat down, by the time the entries arrived it felt downright scripted. Brandon was in full performance mode. He'd ordered the first round of drinks before everyone had even taken their seats. Shots of something expensive and smoky for the guys. Glittering cocktails for the women. Every time the server came by, he cracked a joke loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. To the almost misses, he said at one point, slinging an arm around my shoulders and dragging me in for a kiss on the cheek. People who didn't know us smiled. My friends, the few he'd allowed on the guest list, gave me a thumbs up from further down the table. His friends, though, they watched me. Not in a normal, or happy for you, way. More like a studio audience settling into their seats before the host walks on stage. Their phones lay scattered on the table, lit up every few minutes with buzzing notifications in a group chat I wasn't part of. One of them, Jason, couldn't stop glancing down at his screen and then at Brandon, like they were sharing some private joke. At one point, when Brandon went to the bar to settle a tab, I heard Jason lean toward the guy next to him and whisper, This is going to be wild. His voice barely above the hum of conversation. He didn't realize I heard. I shifted in my seat, the fabric of my dress suddenly too tight across my chest. I caught the eye of the server, a woman about my age balancing a loaded tray. Her gaze flicked from my face to the phone in Jason's hand, then to Brandon's back at the bar. Something like sympathy flashed across her expression, gone as quickly as it came. Everything okay? She mouthed when she reached my side to refill my water. I opened my mouth to say yes, to smile and wave it off the way I always did. The words stuck. I managed a small, tight knot instead. By the time the plates were cleared, my nerves were frayed from trying to decode every look, every half-heard aside. I watched Brandon knock back another drink, watched his shoulders square as if he was psyching himself up. Then he did it. He picked up his glass and tapped his fork against the rim. The clear, high note cut through the noise like a bell. All right, he called out, grinning too widely. Everyone, quiet down for a sec. I want to say something. I want a chairs scraped. Conversations trailed off. Funds flipped, subtle as a wave. A couple face up now, camera apps open. Jason angled his just so. The lens pointed squarely in my direction. My pulse hammered in my ears. Brandon pushed back from the table and stood, one hand resting on my shoulder like a prop. So, he began, sweeping his gaze around the table. Most of you know this already. But Megan and I have been together for, 4 years now? A chorus of, yeah, and 4 long years, rose from his side of the table. Laughter followed. 4 amazing years, he continued, squeezing my shoulder. His voice took on that Fox sincere quality I'd heard him use in staff meetings and toasts at other people's weddings. We've had highs, we've had lows, but through it all, we've been us. A few people, awed. Someone clinked their glass against their neighbor's. For a tiny, ridiculous second, hope fluttered against my ribs. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe he was about to announce something sweet. Surprise honeymoon plans, a goofy story about how we met, a public apology for being distant lately. Then his smile shifted. And because you guys are our closest friends, he went on. I wanted you to hear this from me first. The knot in my stomach cinched tighter. I can't do this, he said. The words dropped into the center of the table like a stone into still water. I managed, my voice barely audible. He didn't look at me. I can't marry you, he repeated, louder now, addressing the table like a CEO giving bad news at a shareholders' meeting. The wedding is off. I don't love you like that anymore. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Sound warped. Murmurs stretching out. Glasses clinking too loudly. Someone's nervous laugh slicing through the tension. Blood roared in my ears. My first instinct was automatic. Trained by 4 years of playing the role he'd written for me. Fix this. Smile. Make it okay. Apologize for making him feel this way. Beg him not to do this here, not like this. I started to speak. Brandon, can we? He cut me off, finally glancing down with something like rehearsed pity. You deserve someone who can handle your intensity, he said, drawing out the last word just enough that everyone could hear it. Someone who doesn't feel trapped. Intensity. The word he'd used every time he wanted to paint me as unreasonable. Every time I'd cried after one of his cutting comments. Every time I'd dared to say, that hurt me. A ripple went through the table. I saw it in slow motion, one friend's eyebrows shooting up, another glancing at Jason, the slight lift of the phones as they framed me in their screens. They were waiting for the tears, waiting for me to scream, to lunge for him, to confirm the story he'd clearly been telling them, that I was too much, too emotional, too unstable to marry. Time thinned. In that stretched-out second, something inside me shifted. Instead of cracking, a strange, icy calm slid into place. I saw the scene for what it was, not a spontaneous confession, a performance, the overhyped group chat, the too eager insistence I dress up, the phones poised like cameras on a reality show. He'd choreographed this. Tears burned behind my eyes, hot and insistent. I focused on my breathing the way I coached panicked bridesmaids to do backstage. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. I felt my chair beneath me, the weight of the ring on my finger, the texture of the tablecloth under my palm. Then I moved. Slowly, deliberately, I slid my chair back and stood up. Brandon's hand fell from my shoulder. For the first time that night, real surprise flickered across his face. I didn't look at the phones. I kept my gaze on him. Thank you, I said. And my voice didn't shake. For ending this before I walked down an aisle to a man who thinks humiliating women is entertainment. A hush fell. Somewhere, a fork clattered onto a plate and stayed there. I took a breath, then slipped the ring off my finger. The metal was warm, my skin underneath indented from months of wear. For a moment, I held it in my palm, the symbol of a future that had just evaporated under restaurant lighting. Then I leaned forward and placed it gently on the table in front of his plate. I hope you and whoever you've been rehearsing this speech with are very happy together, I added. This time I did look at the phones, meeting the camera lenses head-on. And make sure you get my good side when you send this to whatever group chat you planned it for. A couple of his friends flushed. One lowered his phone, suddenly very interested in his drink. I picked up my clutch, straightened my shoulders, and turned toward the door. As I walked past the server station, the same waitress from earlier caught my eye. Her lips pressed together in something like solidarity. I gave her the smallest nod I could manage without my composure cracking. The cool night air outside hit me like a wall. I didn't let myself fall apart on the sidewalk. I held it together long enough to step to the curb, call a rideshare, and slide into the back seat. It wasn't until the car pulled away, fairy lights and brick walls shrinking in the rearview mirror, that my hands started to shake. Inside the restaurant, I could imagine the scene: Brandon frozen in place, his friends murmuring, "Dude, what was that?" She just left. You told us she was going to lose it. In his version, I was supposed to fall apart so he could shake his head and say, "See, this is why I had to leave." Instead, I gave him nothing. And that tiny crack in his story was where everything he'd built started to crumble. I didn't go home that night. The Uber driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, like he was waiting for me to dissolve. But I just gave him my friend Lena's address and stared out the window. The city lights smeared into streaks. My reflection in the glass looked like someone else. A woman in a navy dress, lipstick still perfect, eyes too wide. Lena opened her door before I even knocked, like she'd been standing there the whole time. "Oh my God," she breathed, pulling me into a hug so tight my ribs protested. He actually did it. The words broke whatever thin shell I'd managed to build. I didn't sob. I didn't have the energy for that. But my body shook in her arms, like it was trying to dislodge something lodged too deep. She made up the couch, handed me one of her ex-boyfriend's old t-shirts, and didn't ask for details I couldn't give yet. "Sleep," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow." Sleep came in jagged pieces. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back at that table, watching Brandon's mouth shape the words, "I can't marry you." I woke up to the pale light of winter filtering through Lena's curtains and the dull ache of a hangover I hadn't earned. For a while, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, phone heavy in my hand. The urge to erase him from my life was almost overwhelming. Block his number, delete our photos, nuke every trace of him from my feeds. But another part of my brain, the part that knew how to rebuild a seating chart in 15 minutes after an unexpected no-show, the part that kept meticulous notes on every event, whispered, "Document. Don't destroy." I sat up, heart thudding, and opened my laptop. We'd set up a shared email account months back, a generic Brandon and Megan wedding address we used for vendor bookings and contracts. It had been easier to funnel everything through one place. He'd insisted on having the password for transparency, and I'd agreed because, back then, I still believed that word meant something. I logged in, fingers trembling. At first, it was just the usual flood. Confirmations from the florist, reminders from the venue, a DJ contract I'd already memorized. I scrolled past them, eyes scanning subject lines. Then I saw it. Calendar invite, announcement night, 8 p.m., her restaurant name. The event description popped up when I clicked. "Dinner above the guy's important convo," it read. In the notes section, he'd written, "Make sure everyone's there. Big news." My mouth went dry. I clicked on the sent folder. Nestled among deposit receipts and vendor follow-ups were emails that had nothing to do with flower arrangements. Subject: Saturday, Toad, Jason, Mark, the boys. "Gents, make sure you're at a restaurant by 7:30. I want everyone to see this. Be ready, she's going to flip." My stomach lurched. Be ready, she's going to flip. I scrolled further. Group chat notifications forwarded to the email. Brandon was lazy about separating accounts, apparently. "Jason, can't wait, man. About time. Mark, you sure you want to do it like this? Brandon needs to be done." She'll go crazy no matter what. Might as well have witnesses. The little laughing emoji at the end looked obscene. I leaned back, breathing shallow. The restaurant hadn't been a moment of clarity or courage for him. It had been content. My cursor hovered over the drafts folder. He hadn't cleaned up after himself as well as he thought. One subject line froze me, draft. Statement. I opened it. If anyone asks about the wedding, here's what I'm saying. I tried everything with Megan, but she was unstable. She became obsessive about the wedding, controlling, wouldn't let me breathe. Last night I had to end it for my own sanity. She screamed at me in public, totally lost it. Please don't reach out to her, she'll twist whatever you say. My vision blurred. He'd pre-written the script. All that was missing was my meltdown. Hands shaking now, I clicked back to the inbox and saw another thread I hadn't noticed. His name in the from line, hers in the to, Rebecca. The same Rebecca whose name had popped up in his Instagram comments lately. All hearts and fire emojis. The close friend from work I'd somehow never met. I opened the thread. It didn't start with, "We need to talk about Megan." It started 6 months back with flirtatious jokes, late night, you up? Messages, selfies that left little to the imagination. They escalated into, "Can't wait to see you again." And last night was amazing. While my calendar showed him at the gym, my chest tightened as I scrolled. Finally, 3 weeks before the dinner, Rebecca, "Are you sure you're going to go through with it?" Brandon, I have to get rid of Megan cleanly. Otherwise she'll turn everyone against me. Rebecca, I don't want drama. Brandon, I'll handle it. I'll tell people she's been spiraling for months, that she forced me into the wedding. Once they see her reaction, they'll get it. Rebecca, what if she doesn't react? Brandon, trust me. She will. But the room tilted. For a moment, I honestly thought I might throw up right there on Lena's coffee table. Shock hit first, raw and electric. Then nausea, a rolling wave that made me press a hand to my stomach. And then, familiar now after the night before, something else slid in behind it. Cold, clear, purposeful. He'd laughed about getting rid of me like I was a stain on his shirt. He'd made a plan, complete with witnesses and pre-written talking points, to turn 4 years of my life into a cautionary tale about crazy girlfriends. And I had ruined it by refusing to play along. My fingers steadied. I opened a new folder on my desktop and started dragging things into it. Screenshots of the announcement night, calendar entry, the email to his friends. Be ready, she's going to flip. The draft statement, painting me as unstable. The worst of the messages with Rebecca, enough to show the affair and the intent. Not so much that I had to relive every detail. I saved everything twice. Once to my laptop, once to an external drive I kept for event backups. Habit. When Lena shuffled into the living room in pajama pants and sleep-mussed hair, I was still at the table, eyes gritty from staring at the screen. "You okay?" she asked, then seemed to realize how stupid that sounded. I mean, relatively. I turned the laptop toward her, wordlessly. She read in silence, her face going from confusion to horror to a tight, simmering anger. "He planned it," she said when she finally looked up. "He actually planned to humiliate you and then tell people you were crazy." I nodded. My throat felt too thick to speak. "I always thought there was something off," she admitted. "The way he talked about you sometimes when you weren't around. But this," she shook her head, "this is next level. Has been texting." I managed, gesturing to my phone. Sure enough, the screen lit up again. "We need to talk. You overreacted last night. We can spin this if you calm down." I typed one reply through the fog. "All communication about the venue and deposits can go through email," I wrote. "I will not be discussing our relationship further by text." I hit send, then put the phone face down. He thought he'd pulled off the perfect breakup scene. What he didn't count on was leaving the entire script in a shared folder with an event coordinator who knows exactly what to do with receipts. The Monday after the restaurant fiasco, I stared at my calendar for a long time. There it was, circled with a little heart I'd drawn months ago, our wedding date. Beneath it, in all caps, the name of the venue I'd always secretly wanted to work with, but never had the budget for. until it was my own. Seeing it there made my chest ache. The practical part of my brain, the one that lived in color-coded spreadsheets. Finally pushed through the fog. "You have to cancel," it said. "Today?" I took a breath and dialed. Brighton Loft Events, "This is Carla," came the familiar voice on the other end. "Hey, Carla, it's Megan Collins." There was a pause. "Megan!" Or, is that a stupid question? Of course she'd heard. Event industry gossip traveled faster than any press release. "I've been better," I admitted. "I need to talk about the booking for June 14th. Another pause, softer this time. "Let's talk." I launched into the professional spiel I'd rehearsed in my head. Change in circumstances, relationship ended, fully aware of the non-refundable deposit clause. My voice stayed remarkably steady, like I was discussing a client's event instead of my own almost wedding. "We'll sign whatever we need to," I finished. "I understand if the deposit's gone. I just wanted to give you as much notice as possible." "Well," Carla said slowly, "yes, the contract says the deposit is non-refundable within 6 months of the date. You know how it is." "Of course," I said quickly, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I just wanted to be fair. We really appreciate it. But," she cut in, "I'm not in the business of kicking people when they're down." I blinked. "What?" "You're one of the best coordinators I've worked with, Megan," she said. "Half our inquiries lately have been because someone heard you're handling things. I'm not thrilled about an empty Saturday in June, but I'm also not going to pretend I don't know what you're dealing with. I'm not asking for—" "I know you're not," she said. "Here's what I can do. I can't give you the money back, but I can credit the deposit toward another event. Personal, professional, whatever you want, as long as it's within the next 18 months. Your call." I stared at the wall, at the vision board still pinned there with swatches of blush and gold we'd picked for the wedding. Another event. For a moment, all I could picture was the empty space. The aisle I wouldn't walk down, the dance floor we wouldn't share, the head table that would never see our place cards. Then another image nudged its way in the same space. Same lights, same music. But instead of a ceremony built on lies, there was laughter that didn't hurt. Faces that didn't watch me waiting to break. A room full of people who actually wished me well. Not a funeral for a relationship that never really existed. A party for the fact that it was over. "I might have an idea," I heard myself say. Later that afternoon, I sat across from my therapist, hands wrapped around a mug of tea she'd pressed into them. "You want to throw a party," she said, lips twitching, "for your canceled wedding." "A narrow escape party," I corrected, "or maybe almost Mrs. Bash. I'm still workshopping the name." "Tell me why," she said, but there was no judgment in it. "Because right now, the story out there is that he dumped me in a restaurant and I disappeared," I said. "Because he has a draft email ready to send painting me as unstable if I react. Because I have a venue, a deposit, and vendors who already blocked that day for me." I took a breath. "And because I don't want my last memory of that date to be him ending our wedding in front of an audience. I want it to be something else. Something that's mine." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "What's your intention?" she asked. "Revenge or celebration." "Celebration," I said, surprising myself with how quickly the answer came. "I mean, there will be jokes. I'm not a saint. But I don't want it to be a roast of him. I want it to be a thank you to the people who actually show up for me, and a way to say out loud, I did not break. I got out. Then plan it," she said. "Just remember, telling the truth about what happened is different from making your whole life about him. Make sure the party is about you being free, not just him being awful." By that evening, I had a working file called Narrow Escape Party open on my laptop. I emailed Carla to confirm the date. I called the caterer and asked about tweaking the menu, from plated chicken breasts to shared small plates and decadent desserts. The DJ laughed when I told him the new theme. "Best breakup party ever," he said. "I'm in." I drafted a guest list that looked very different from the wedding one. No Brandon's gym buddies. No boys who thought my pain was entertainment. No bridesmaids he'd flirted with. Instead, Lena, my college roommates. My coworkers who'd quietly asked if I was okay over the last year. A few mutual friends who'd only ever seen the Instagram version of our relationship and deserved to know the truth. On the invitation mock-up, under the date and venue, I wrote, "Come celebrate my narrow escape and the beginning of the rest of my life. No gifts, just good company. Dress code whatever makes you feel free." I hit save, then addressed one last email. To Brandon, subject venue per our previous agreement. The venue has been canceled for the wedding, and the deposit credited in my name for another event. All further communication about vendors can go through email. I added him to the BCC line on the digital invitation list, too. Not because I wanted him there. Because I wanted him to see the subject line pop up, "Narrow escape party, you're inviteds," but not really. I'd spent 4 years planning events for other people's big moments. Now I had a venue, a date, and a choice. Mourn a wedding that would have killed me slowly, or throw the first party of my new life. So I sent out the invitations, and one of them went exactly where I knew it would sting most. The night of the narrow escape party. Brighton Loft looks exactly like I'd imagined my wedding would. Strings of lights draped from the rafters, candles flickering in glass cylinders, music humming low under the buzz of conversation. The difference is, there's no head table, no aisle, no dress code beyond. Whatever makes you feel free. At the entrance, where a seating chart would have been, there's a sign Lena and I made that reads in looping script, "Cheers to near misses," who underneath. Someone's probably Karav has added in smaller letters, "Better alone than with a narcissist." The bar menu makes me snort every time I pass it. Signature cocktails, the red flag cranberry margarita with a